The diplomatic station hung in orbit over the pale, cratered moon like a glass dagger poised to strike. Its corridors were quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't mean peace, just a pause before something broke. Captain Darius Kane adjusted the collar of his formal uniform and kept his stride steady, even as the alien guard's reptilian eyes followed his every step toward the grand chamber. He had been here before, across the table from the Zereth Dominion, but today's air was different. There was no veneer of mutual respect left. The towering bronze doors opened, revealing the chamber lit by high, cold lights. Banners of the Dominion unfurled above the oval table. The Zereth sat in their section, scales glinting under the illumination, their posture a mixture of boredom and predation. Marcus's Vale was already seated, slender, dark-haired. The kind of man who preferred wit over weapons but carried an unshakable steel behind his measured words. He gave Kane a single glance that spoke volumes. "Stay ready." The Zerath ambassador, a massive specimen named Karath, rose to speak, his voice a low, rolling growl that carried across the chamber. "Humans, your presence in this sector grows like a weed, unwanted and unchecked. We offer you the courtesy of submission. Swear your colonies to our protection, and in return, you may keep your homeworld." Kane took his seat, meeting the alien's slitted eyes. "Protection," he said slowly, "is not what you're offering. You're demanding chains and calling them gifts." Vale's tone was calm, diplomatic. "The Terran Assembly came here in good faith, seeking equitable borders. You will find no submission here, only cooperation if both sides are willing." Karath bared his teeth in a slow, predatory smile. "Then your answer is refusal." A murmur rolled through the alien. "Delegation," claws drumming against the table's surface. Kane knew that sound. It was the sound predators made before they leaped. The ambassador's next words weren't meant to negotiate. They were meant to wound. "You will regret your arrogance. Fleets already stand ready. Your colonies will fall before your primitive defenses even see them coming." Kane glanced at Vale, who gave the smallest shake of his head, "Don't rise to the bait." But then Karath leaned forward, his voice turning almost intimate. "Perhaps we should make an example. Destroy something precious to you. Something irreplaceable." The chamber doors opened again, and an aide rushed to Kane's side, whispering frantically. Kane's jaw tightened. He rose, voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Ambassador, I suggest you reconsider your threats. They may cost you more than you can imagine." Karath only tilted his head. "Threats? No. Captain, promises." The aide's voice was barely audible in Kane's ear. "Sir, it's the Horizon. They've targeted it." The Horizon Vale's transport docked in orbit. Before Kane could respond, the chamber's massive viewing wall flickered to life. The feed was live, pulled from the station's external sensors. The Horizon floated in the darkness, a sleek, silver vessel. Then bright lances of energy erupted from a Zereth warship hanging too close for coincidence. The Horizon shuddered under the barrage, shields flaring once, twice before the third salvo tore it open. The explosion bloomed silently in the void, fragments scattering like embers into the black. Someone shouted. Kane didn't know if it was him or Vale. The humans in the room surged to their feet. The Zereth delegation didn't move at all. Some of them were smiling. Karath spoke into the silence. "A demonstration, Captain. Now you understand our resolve." Kane took a step forward, every muscle in his body burning to close the distance to make the alien choke on his own arrogance. Vale caught his arm, not to stop him from acting, but to anchor him long enough for thought to overtake fury. "This is how you open a war," Kane said, voice low and dangerous. "And you think you'll survive it?" The ambassador's nostrils flared. "We have survived for 1,000 cycles. We will survive you. Kane's reply was a whisper meant to carry. No, you won't. Security teams poured into the chamber, weapons drawn not at the Zero, of course, but at the humans, as if they were the danger here. Kane's gaze stayed locked with Karath until he turned sharply and walked out, Vale matching his pace. The corridors blurred past. Kane didn't remember the walk back to the human quarters, only the constant thrum in his ears. When the doors sealed behind them, Vale finally spoke. You know what this means? They've decided there's no need for diplomacy. They decided that the moment they thought they could win, Kane said, already pulling up a secure panel. We make the call now. Vale's eyes narrowed. The council will want evidence, procedure, they'll get the truth. Kane cut in. And then they'll get my recommendation. The screen lit, cycling through encryption layers until the emblem of the Terran Assembly filled the display. The duty officer on the other end barely had time to greet them before Kane began speaking. Mark this transmission for the Council. Priority 1. The Zareth Dominion has assassinated our chief diplomat in a direct act of war. Destroyed his transport in neutral orbit, on record, in front of witnesses. There is no ambiguity. They want war. His voice hardened. Then, prepare to be erased. The officer hesitated for only a second before nodding and routing the message through the highest channels. Kane killed the link and turned to Vale. Start. Pulling everything we have on Zareth fleet strength, outposts, and command structure. If they want a war, we're going to give them one they'll wish they'd never started. Vale exhaled, the weight of the moment sinking in. You're not thinking defense. No, Kane said, stepping toward the viewport. Beyond the glass, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, the Zareth fleet waited, smug in their certainty that humanity would fold. Kane let the thought harden into resolve. I'm thinking extinction. Vale said nothing, but he didn't need to. The silence between them was heavy, charged, already shaping into the first steps of a plan. Kane watched the void, already picturing. It littered with the wreckage of those who believed humanity was weak. The chamber doors behind them slid open again. One of Kane's officers, face pale, eyes tight with urgency. Sir, incoming reports from Ardent Prime. The Dominion's fleet has entered the system. Kane didn't move from the viewport. Patch it through to my quarters and prepare the fleet readiness report. The officer hesitated. Captain, if this goes the way it looks, there's no turning back. Kane finally turned, meeting the man's gaze with absolute certainty. Good. Then we make sure the first step we take is one they can never recover from. He looked back out at the stars, his voice almost a murmur, but carrying all the weight of the moment. They think they've seen war. They haven't. Not yet. The image of the horizon's destruction still burned in his mind. The cold satisfaction on Karath's face as the ship was torn apart. That would be erased, too long with the Dominion's pride, their fleets, their name. Somewhere deep. In the station, alarms began to wail. Kane listened for a moment, then turned toward the command deck. His stride was steady again, as it had been when he entered the chamber, but now there was nothing left of restraint. Only the knowledge of what was coming. The war had already begun. The chamber of the Terran Assembly was a cavern of steel and light, its tiered seats filled with the faces of men whose decisions could ignite or extinguish entire worlds. Captain Darius Kane stood in the center, his boots echoing on the polished floor as the room's holographic projectors cycled through the evidence. Grainy footage of the horizon erupting into a spray of incandescent fragments. The unmistakable silhouette of a Zareth warship firing without hesitation. The images spoke for themselves, yet Kane's voice carried over them with measured force. They didn't fire a warning shot. They didn't issue a formal declaration. They assassinated our diplomat in neutral space. They burned him alive in his ship and made sure the galaxy saw it. This is not a misunderstanding. This is war weather. We choose to acknowledge it or not. A murmur rolled through the assembly. Some members shifted in their seats. Others stared back at him with arms crossed, weighing risk against resolve. Counselor Harrow, a heavy-set man with silver at his temples, leaned forward. Captain Kane, the Dominion outnumbers us in every category. Their fleets are older, larger, and bloodied in 100 conflicts. You're asking us to gamble the survival of our species on a full-scale confrontation. Kane didn't flinch. I'm telling you, the survival of our species depends on it. If we wait, they will take our colonies one by one until we're too weak to resist. They will bleed us slow. And when they come for Earth, there won't be anything left to fight with. The chamber fell into tense silence. Kane knew some of these men feared the Zeroth because they'd seen the aftermath of their war-scarred cities. Planetary surfaces stripped bare. Others feared them because they didn't understand the one thing Kane did. The Zeroth had never fought humanity before. Counselor Vale, thin and sharp-eyed, broke the quiet. What exactly are you proposing? Kane's answer was immediate. Mobilize the fleet. Accelerate the completion of the Erebus and every other Titan-class vessel still in the yards. Initiates full readiness on our orbital defenses. And he looked to the far side of the chamber where Commander Ethan Ward sat. Arms folded, we strike first. Ward rose without being called to the floor. His voice was deep, deliberate. The Zeroth belief we're slow to act, shackled by our own bureaucracy. They expect us to respond cautiously, defensively. We move now, hard and fast. We take away their advantage before they consolidate their fleets. Harrow frowned. And if your intelligence is wrong, if we commit to an offensive and they crush our strike force, the war is over before it begins. Ward met his gaze evenly. Then we die on our feet, not on our knees. The words hung there. Kane let the silence stretch before speaking again, slower now, more controlled. We have one window before they deploy their full armada. We know where their forward base is, thanks to intelligence assets we've cultivated for years. If we shatter that base, we cripple their supply lines, destroy their staging grounds, and cut off the head of their command network. Without it, they'll be disorganized, scrambling to defend instead of pressing the attack. The assembly deliberated. Behind closed channels for what felt like an eternity. Kane and Ward waited in the antechamber, the hum of the station's engines thrumming through the deck plates. Ward leaned against the wall, eyes narrowed. They're going to stall. It's what they do. Then we remind them what's at stake, Kane replied. When the doors opened again, the decision came in clipped. Formal language, full mobilization, authorized. Titan-class production, expedited. And Kane given operational command of the first fleet with Ward as senior intelligence officer by the time they reached the command deck of the orbital defense station. The order was already rippling through the network. Docks lit up as workers swarmed over the hulls of half-finished ships. Power cores coming online one by one. Drone swarms ferried crates of munitions to hangars, where squads of Marines drilled in perfect unison under the bark of their instructors. The Erebus dominated the view from the main viewport, a dark, angular behemoth the size of a small city. Its armor plating still being fused into place. Kane stood with hands clasped behind his back, watching sparks cascade from the welding rigs. How long until she's ready? 4 days if we cut every corner, Ward answered, studying the construction telemetry on a datapad. 2 if we push the crews past the breaking point. Kane's eyes didn't leave the ship. Push them. Ward gave the faintest nod and turned to relay the order. Kane moved to the tactical display, watching icons bloom across the star maps. Fleets converging, smaller ships redeploying from deep patrol routes to reinforce the core worlds. Even with every available asset, The sheer disparity in numbers between their forces and the Dominion's was sobering. Kane ignored it. Numbers didn't win war's decisive action, did. News from the front trickled in, each report worse than the last. Ardent Prime's defenses had collapsed within hours. Surviving transports were hunted through asteroid fields by Dominion warbands. The transmission from a Marine Sergeant blood on his armor. Voice row described civilians being corralled and executed for sport. Kane didn't let the recording run to the end. He summoned the fleet captains for a closed briefing. The holographic projection of each man appeared around the table, hard-eyed and silent. Kane's voice was stripped of any pretense of reassurance. This war will not be won by holding the line. We hit them where it hurts, and we keep hitting until they can't stand. You'll receive sealed orders within the hour detailing your approach vectors to the Zero forward base. Our objective is annihilation of their capacity to wage war, not their civilians. We fight clean, but we fight to win. Ward stepped forward, pulling up schematics of the Dominion's base massive docking arms, shielded hangars, orbital. Weapons arrays. Their primary weakness is overconfidence. They'll think any breach is a feint until it's too late. Our jammers will blind their targeting systems, and our drones will cut their comms. Once their outer defenses fall, their command center is vulnerable to precision strikes. The captains absorbed the plan in silence. None questioned it. When the briefing ended, Kane found himself alone in the observation gallery. The Erebus loomed in the dark, lit by the harsh white light of the shipyard. Somewhere deep in its hull, the crew was already running drills, familiarizing themselves with systems still warm from the foundry. Ward entered quietly, a datapad in hand. We've intercepted a high-priority Dominion transmission. There. Moving to fleet groups to reinforce the forward base. If we're going to take it, it has to be within the next 72 hours. Kane looked out at the unfinished warship, the lights of the yard flickering across its armor. Then we launch in 48. Ward didn't argue. I'll have the infiltration teams ready. They stood in silence for a moment, both men knowing the cost of what they were preparing to do. Kane broke it first. When this starts, we don't stop until it's over. Not until the Dominion understands what they've unleashed. Ward's answer was quiet, certain. They'll understand. The question is whether there'll be anything left of them to remember it. Kane turned away from the viewport, the reflection of the Erebus vanishing behind him. Then let's make sure there isn't. The orders went out across the fleet, encrypted and sealed. Engines began their low, thunderous hum. The sound was not one of preparation anymore. It was the sound of inevitability. The war had a shape now, and it was moving. The void was silent, but aboard the Erebus, silence had given way to a low, steady rhythm, the thrum of engines wound to maximum capacity, the pulse of a warship cutting through the dark with purpose. Captain Darius Kane stood on the command. Decca's eyes locked on the star map projected before him. The Zareth forward base glimmered in red on the far side of the display, surrounded by the arcs of patrolling enemy fleets. Every icon represented a threat, but also a target. Course correction complete, the helmsman reported, his voice taut. We're approaching the slingshot point in 1 minute. Commander Ethan Ward moved to Kane's side, datapad in hand. Stealth drones have been deployed ahead of us. They'll map enemy sensor coverage and feed it straight into targeting. Kane gave a single nod. Once the burn starts, no comes with the drones. We trust their programming. Ward's eyes flicked to the display. This works, we'll drop right in their shadow and be inside weapons range before they can react. If it doesn't, Kane said, we won't be having this conversation. The countdown reached 0, and the Erebus shuddered as the maneuver began. Massive gravitational forces from the nearby gas giant seized the ship's trajectory, flinging it around the planet's curve. Artificial gravity strained to compensate, and the view outside the forward canopy warped with streaking light. Kane watched the velocity markers climb in the distance. The target swelled into Focusa, sprawling lattice of metal and energy suspended against the stars, its central spire glowing faintly from the heat of its power core. Warships clustered around it like armored insects, unaware of the storm hurtling toward them. Ward's voice was low. "Their comms are still clean. They have no idea we're here." "Good," Kane said. "Bring the fleet in tight. No scattered formations." The human warships emerged from the shadow of the gas giant in perfect synchrony, every vessel accelerating toward the target. Within seconds, the Erebus tactical systems were alive with telemetry weapon locks, shield calibrations, targeting solutions. Kane's voice cut through the readiness chatter. "Engage on my mark. Priority targets are defense grids and command relays. We blind them before they can call for help. Mark." The Erebus fired first, blinding arc of kinetic slugs from its primary railguns. The projectiles tore through the nearest orbital defense platform, shattering it into a drifting cloud of debris. The rest of the fleet joined in, its concentrated bursts of plasma and rail fire stripping away enemy shields before the Zareth could even respond. "Return fire." "Detected," Ward called out, scanning the feed. Uncoordinated multiple batteries shooting blind. "They're jamming themselves," Kane said, a thin edge in his voice. "Push forward. Keep the pressure constant." A squadron of Zareth interceptors broke from the base's hangars, streaking toward the human formation. Kane didn't blink. "Point defense, full auto. Don't let them close." The ship's flanks erupted in a web of defensive fire, shredding the first wave of interceptors before they crossed the engagement. Line wreckage spun away into the void. Ward glanced over. "We've got a window to deploy the ground teams. Launch them," Kane said. "Tell them this is one way, unless they make it count." In the Erebus hangar bay, dropships roared to life, their armored hulls gleaming under harsh lights. Inside, squads of Marines checked weapons and secured explosives. Faces set in grim readiness. The lead craft peeled away from the fleet, plunging toward the base's central platform under the cover of suppressive fire, as the dropships disappeared from visual range. Kane's gaze never left the tactical display. "Ward, status on the base's shield generators. 2 of 4 down. The others are cycling, trying to compensate for the power loss." "Break them," Kane ordered. The Erebus forward batteries unleashed another salvo, coordinated, with flanking strikes from the destroyers. The third shield generator erupted in a plume of molten metal, and the fourth flickered erratically before collapsing entirely. On the base's surface, the Marines hit the deck running. Alien gravity tugged at their gear, but human conditioning compensated for the disorientation. Plasma bolts from Zareth defenders lit the air. Marines returned fire with disciplined bursts, advancing behind the thud of concussion grenades. Sergeant Rourke's voice came through the comms. "Charges planted on the primary support struts. 3 minutes to detonation." Kane's reply was steady, acknowledged. "We'll clear you a path out if you want one." Ward leaned in. "Zareth reinforcements incoming from the far side of the base. Estimated arrival, 90 seconds. "They won't get here in time," Kane said. The first explosions rippled through the base's superstructure, a chain reaction of fire and twisted metal. Debris scattered in all directions as the Marines scrambled back to their dropships, some diving aboard as blast waves followed them. "Recall all teams," Kane ordered. "Bring them in before the shockwave hits." The Erebus swung in a broad arc, its guns still hammering the crippled base. As the last dropship cleared the blast radius, the charges on the central spire ignited. For an instant, the entire structure glowed from within, then tore apart in a blinding sphere of light. The shockwave rolled out across space, flinging fragments and wreckage through the surrounding patrol fleets. Ward exhaled slowly, watching the readings. That's it. The forward base is gone. High Command with it. Kane's gaze stayed on the devastation. Then we move before they recover. Plot a course to their home system. Ward hesitated. We just crippled one of the largest military installations in their territory. They'll be on high alert. That's fine, Kane said. Let them be ready. We want them to see us coming. The fleet regrouped, the ships falling into formation behind the Erebus. Engines flared, cutting through the darkness as the wreckage of the Zareth base drifted into nothing. Kane turned from the viewport, the image of the destruction still burning in his mind. This isn't over until they can't make war again. Not ever. Ward met his gaze. You're talking about total dismantlement? Kane didn't correct him. He didn't need to. The orders were already forming, the path already clear. This wasn't just retaliation anymore. It was the erasure of an enemy who had mistaken humanity's patience for weakness, and in the cold silence of space, the Erebus set its course for the heart of the Zareth's dominion. The journey to Zareth Prime was a straight line through enemy territory, but no ships moved to intercept. Kane understood why. The Dominion wasn't retreating in fear. It was pulling everything back to the homeworld, gathering strength for a single, decisive stand. The Erebus's decks thrummed with the steady vibration of engines locked at full burn. The crew moved with an urgency stripped of panic. This was the quiet before a storm they had chosen to sail into. Kane stood at the center of the command deck, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the main viewport. Zareth Prime hung. Far ahead, a green and gold marble wreathed in silver defense rings. Dozens of battlecruisers patrolled its orbit in tight formation, their metallic hides gleaming in the light of the system's star. Even from here, Kane could see the faint shimmer of planetary shields stretching over the surface. Ward approached, datapad in hand, his expression grim but focused. Outer defense grid has 3 layers, heavy rail platforms on the first minefields. On the second, and energy shield projectors in low orbit. Planetary shields are keyed to those projectors. Take them out, and we can hit anything on the surface. Time to intercept, Kane asked. 6 minutes until the first layer. Once we're committed, there's no breaking off without losing. The fleet? Kane gave a small nod. That's the point. The fleet closed in, the warship formations moving like a blade cutting through the dark. Kane opened the ship-wide channel. His voice was calm, unhurried. All hands, this is Captain Kane. You know what's waiting for us ahead. You've seen what they did to our colonies, our people. Today, we finish it. We fight not for revenge, but so they will never have the chance to do it again. Hold the line, trust your brothers, and follow your orders. That's how we win. The first defense platforms came into range, and the blackness of space lit with sudden violence. Enemy railguns fired massive tungsten rounds, each moving fast, enough to punch through steel as if it were paper. The Erebus forward shields flared, absorbing impacts as her own guns answered in kind. Every shot was precise, stripping armor from the platforms until they ruptured in bursts of flame and molten debris. Ward monitored the tactical feed. First layer down, no significant hull damage. Push through the minefield, Kane ordered. The second layer was invisible until the mines activated hundreds of autonomous weapons, each the size of a small shuttle, rushing to intercept the fleet. The Erebus unleashed a storm of pointy fence fire, the smaller frigates weaving in to clear lanes for the larger ships. One destroyer vanished in a white blossom of fire as a mine detonated too close. But the fleet pressed forward without breaking formation. Outer layers breached, Ward confirmed. Approaching shield projectors. The Lorbit weapons platforms opened fire as the human fleet emerged, their beams and plasma bolts painting space with streaks of deadly color. Kane's voice was level. All capital ships, fire. On the projectors, fighters cover the gaps and keep their interceptors off us. The battle dissolved into chaos. Fighters screamed between the hulks of dueling warships, missile trails curving in deadly arcs before disappearing into eruptions of fire. The Erebus took a direct hit along her port side, the deck shuddering violently, but the shields held. One by one, the massive projector towers collapsed under sustained fire, their destruction sending ripples through the planetary shield until it flickered. Like a dying flame, Ward's eyes narrowed. Last projector is down. Shield breach confirmed. Then we go in, Kane said. The fleet descended, the curve of Zareth Prime filling the viewport. Below, the capital city sprawled across a vast plateau, a lattice of metallic spires and fortified bastions. Kane could see the gleam of anti-orbital batteries tracking their approach. Target only military installations, Kane ordered. We're not here to slaughter civilians. Precision strikes rained down from orbit. Railgun slugs flattened. Fortresses, missile salvos tore through armored bunkers, and plasma beams carved trenches through staging grounds packed with war machines. The city burned in controlled lines, each strike chosen to cripple rather than obliterate. Ward moved to Kane's side, voice quieter now. We're getting surrender signals from outlying garrisons. Smaller fleets are breaking formation and jumping out of system. They're waiting for their leaders to give the order, Kane said. So we take away their leaders. The Erebus turned her guns on the Central Command Citadel, a towering structure bristling with weaponry. The first salvo gutted its outer defenses. The second caved in the upper levels. Fires raged through its interior, but Kane didn't look away. This was the heart of the Dominion's war machine, and it was coming apart piece by piece. A transmission. Request blinked on Ward's console's Urith command. Open channel. He glanced at Kane, who gave a short nod. The screen filled with the image of a battered Zareth warlord, his scales scorched. One eye clouded with blood. You have broken our fleets, the alien rasped. You stand over our world. What more? Do you want? Kane's voice was even. An end. Total disarmament. Every warship dismantled. Every weapons foundry destroyed. You will never rebuild them. The warlord's lip curled. And if we refuse, Kane didn't hesitate. Then you won't be here to refuse anything. The alien stared at him for a long moment. Then the transmission cut. Ward's hand hovered over the weapons control. Orders hold fire, Kane said. If they have any sense left, they'll take the chance I just gave them. Minutes crawled by, the fleet holding position in high orbit. Then the signal came: planet-wide surrender. Codes transmitted on all channels. Ward let out a slow breath. It's over. Kane's gaze stayed on the burning city. Not until the last ship is in our custody and the last foundry is gone. Over the next hours, the process unfolded with mechanical precision. Zareth fleets docked under human escort. Weapons stockpiles were cataloged and destroyed. Warships were stripped for parts under the watch of human marines. By the time the sun dipped below the planet's horizon, the Dominion was no longer a military power, was a name on a map. And little else. As the final reports came in, Ward joined Kane at the viewport. You've changed the balance of the entire sector. The other powers will be watching us now. Let them, Kane said. They'll see what happens when you try to erase us. For a long moment, they stood in silence, watching the planet spin slowly below. Fires still burned on the ruins of the Citadel, and the scars of orbital strikes traced the land like warning marks carved into stone. Kane knew those scars would fade in time, but the memory of this day-the-day humanity proved it would not. Be conquered would not fade for generations. When he finally turned from the viewport, it was with the quiet certainty of a man who had not just won a war, but set a precedent. Set a course for Earth, he ordered. Let the galaxy see us come home. The Erebus engines roared to life, the fleet forming up around her. In their wake, the Zereth Dominion lay dismantled, its war machines scattered to the void. Ahead, the stars stretched into infinity, and somewhere among them, other powers were already recalculating the measure of mankind. Kane allowed himself one last glance at the conquered world before the jump. "Remember this," he murmured too. The silence. "We don't start wars, but we end them." The stars elongated, the ship surged forward, and the Erebus vanished into the dark, carrying with it the unmistakable weight of a new era.